Jesus, it's packed.
Yeah, go down the back there, so. Welcome to the Shnug with Richie and Lavin. Hello, and welcome. This is a new podcast from the west coast of Ireland, where we invite interesting people into the Shnug and find out a little bit more about their lives. My name is Richard Loftus.
And I'm Lavin.
Jesus, lovely day.
It's gorgeous. We're here in the beautiful Burren Lowlands at my house, at my parents' house.
Perched right on the corner of Galway Bay.
Perched right, I would say the mouth of Kinvara Bay. Yeah. You can see Douris across the way and the Burren Hills. And it's the first nice day we've had in, Jesus, fucking months, I'd say.
Yeah, what you call it? It's great actually to get the ball finally rolling on this. Like
it is, yeah. COVID's been keeping one of us out of commission each. You know, the past couple of times we've been trying to do this for how many months? Maybe 2 months now.
A while.
It's been a while.
I've had COVID probably once anyway since we last attempted this.
Yeah,
and it's probably more to do with our stubbornness, the fact that we actually wanted to interview people, you know, face to face rather than over Zoom or something
exactly,
like that.
Yeah.
And you know, just in the
like drinking on, you know, when the whole Zoom thing, you're drinking alone and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, so it's definitely, this is a lot better having people in the room with you, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, the conversation is a bit more, you know,
not as stilted.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get a few people kind of based in and around the west of Ireland or might hail from the west of Ireland. Because that's where we're based and that's what we're passionate about.
That's it.
And as it goes forward, we'll get different people in.
More interesting people than this guy.
And who is this guy?
This is Eamon Healy. Hello, Eamon.
Hi, lads. Thanks for having me on.
And Eamon is a genealogist and a local historian who currently works for Ancestry.com.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working for Ancestry for the last 6 years, but I suppose the family history and local history thing goes back probably, you know, since I was a young lad. I'd say 7-8 years old, and started looking at the genealogy thing probably 10-15 years ago.
Just so we place ourselves in the world, we're in Galway on the west coast of Ireland. And Eamon, you're originally from South Galway.
Yeah, I'm from a small parish called Beagh, so, you know, 6-7 miles outside of the town of Gort. So I would have went to school with Lavin.
Yeah.
So that's where I grew up. That's where I was born and reared. So I've been there, went to school there. One of the few claims to fame for Beagh is Michael Cusick of GAA fame. He used to teach in the national school there back in the 1860s.
Fine beard on that lad.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. A lot more of those kind of Michael Cusick beards rocking around during the last 2 years of COVID lockdowns. But so I went to school there.
That's Michael Cusick of Cusick Park in Ennis as
well.
Yeah.
He's from Carron and Clare, so just
yeah.
across the burn. Actually, from here we're looking out across the bay. So he used to teach in the school there, and the rumor goes as well that it was I'm probably getting into the history obviously straight away.
Yeah, go for it.
The rumor goes that the first sliotar ever made for a hurling game with the GA rules was a man from Gort. So Michael Cusick was
it neon yellow?
It wasn't neon yellow. No. No, I don't think it was even white. I'd imagine. I think.
I want probably like a dark brown. I'd say.
Yeah, some kind of old fashioned leather with turf inside. I think I don't know exactly what it was made
Class.
from. Yeah. So a man called Ned Treston. For any of those are wondering what his name was.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Ned what?
Treston.
Yeah. Is there many Trestons in Gort still?
No, not very common. I'm sure there's probably a few knocking about, but none that I would know personally.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a really
no,
Irish name.
It doesn't. Really, no, I mean, it's something that I haven't looked into yet. One of the few surnames of the area that I haven't looked into. But yeah, so I was in. That's where I'm from. Another thing there would be Lough Cutra Castle. Some people might know that there was a music festival there for a while as well. So I grew up from there, about 1.5 miles from the Clare border.
Okay.
But quite firmly Galway. I'm not Clare. My mother's from Clare, and my grandparents and my dad's side, one of them is from Clare, but definitely Galway through and through.
Definitely Galway.
Yeah.
Like all of us here, sitting here.
Yeah. You can say that if you want, but I don't think so. You can check the colours on my bag there now. But
Christmas. I thought that was for Christmas.
It's for Christmas. Yeah, Mayo's for every time of the year, Lavin. You know, every day is Christmas and Mayo.
It's not
you
for
know?
Sam though.
This is our year, you know.
Yeah,
this is our
yeah.
year. But so you went to primary school in Beagh as well,
Yeah, so the national school I went to, there's two in the parish, Lacutra National School, and then I suppose went on from there to Gort Secondary School. So I was there for about 2 or 3 years before I met Lavin.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, like I suppose to backtrack, I always had an interest in the history thing, primarily because there was a neighbour next door that lived next to us. So to put it in context, like Beagh is very rural parish. You know, the typical GA church or pub is the 3 outlets for any young lad in the area. Yeah. And I wasn't much good at hurling. I was a bit chubby as a child, and I had a bit of a height advantage, but I didn't have the temperament to go with that. So that ruled out the hurling.
You were tall?
I was tallish. That was the only attribute that I could contribute to the team.
Yeah, I was the tallest guy in 6th class.
You were?
Yeah, and then the growth stopped.
That's something we all
Yeah.
share.
Yeah.
I was
always
the same.
the tallest lad as
I was
well.
the same. I think I was probably the tallest, or one of the tallest in 6th class first year until the growth spurt hit everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be very religious, so the church wasn't really a thing. And I suppose the pub, obviously only as a young lad, you don't really get to make those decisions yourself, but Dad wouldn't necessarily have been a big drinker, so that left history in talking to the older folk in the parish.
Yeah.
And I was blessed in some ways that Mick Holleran lived next door. He was an old bachelor farmer. He hadn't any family around, so he used to call on us to help him out with the farm, and wanted to have those chores done. You'd still sit with them and listen to his stories. So he's the kind of man that would sit down and have his dinner at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, he'd be up fairly early.
You'd be up at 4 in the morning.
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that.
He'd have his dinner at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Walk in at 10 o'clock.
Like lunch dinner or dinner?
Oh, kind of a dinner, like bacon and cabbage with spuds, 10 a.m.
Like how old fellas would eat their dinner in the middle of the day kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Still though, that's very early.
yeah, extremely early. And there was another bachelor that used to live about a mile or two away. He used to come, and he was, I suppose, a little bit more mobile than Mick was. Mick was a big man, you know, I don't know exactly, but probably close on 20 stone.
Jeez.
Shovels for hands and a temperament to go with it as well. But yeah, he used to sit down, listen to the radio, and he was a kind of a meeting spot for all the old farmers in the area. And children our age, because you get away with a lot more, because of course
So
he didn't
cards
have
played at night and all that
exactly
kind of thing.
25.
Ooh, 25.
A lot of arguments over that. Teams, people not knowing how to play with their partner. So listening to Mick's stories is kind of what got me into the history thing, and it stemmed from that, really, to be honest.
I know a few stories of him.
Yeah.
There's 2 in particular that I love.
Right. There's a lot of stories about him, in fairness.
One involves you taking a lush of water.
Yeah, that was that was a funny one, alright. My mother wasn't very happy when that happened, but basically, he had his house is fairly basic, and he had a range that was fired off fuel that you'd burn. So he'd always have turf. So every summer he would buy in 3 or 4 tons of turf. But the problem was he didn't really have a place that was easy access on the boreen that we live on. So what would happen was he would order in this load of turf, never have an exact day that the turf would come. The turf would come and dump the 3 or 4 tons or whatever it was of turf on the road, and Mick is the first house on the road. There's 10 houses on the road in total. We'd be the second. So he'd come down in a panic saying, "We need you to come down to throw in the turf so the people could actually use the road."
Yeah, of course.
On this particular day, I don't know, I was coming into my teenage years, maybe 12, 13, 14, around that age. Maybe even a little bit younger, I can't remember exactly. But it was a scorcher of a day. And I don't know if you've had the pleasure of throwing in turf, but when it's a scorcher of a day and there's no wind or nothing, the turf dust goes everywhere. In the top of your nostrils, in the back of your throat.
Kind of like dust kind of shite.
Yeah, just like it almost gets kind of mucusy. And find it hard to breathe if you're not careful. So after about an hour throwing in a little bit of this turf, I asked him, can I go in and get a swig of water or 7-Up from his dresser? So he had one of those old style dressers in the house.
Yeah.
And you knew where he kept the 7-Up?
Oh, I knew where everything was because, of course, at this stage he was using the Zimmer frame, so it would be too much to be asking him to get you a drink.
Had he tennis balls on the bottom?
Tennis balls on the... He did, actually, yeah. He did. So you wouldn't hear
Why
him.
do they do that? Why don't they just make him with something?
Well, I think he did it so you wouldn't hear him coming, you know. He'd surprise you. But the long story short, he said, go on in there, you know where it is. So I went in, grabbed the first bottle of 7-Up that I could find, and swung it back. Didn't come for air until I'd taken a good 3 or 4 gulps of it, and put the bottle back down, and it hit me fairly strong. I didn't know what was going on. And turned out it wasn't 7-Up. So I went back out and told him, I said, look, I think your 7-Up has gone off. And he said, oh, Jesus Christ. He said, which bottle did you take? And I said, the one in the left-hand drawer. And he said, no, that's not fucking 7-Up. He said, it's poachine. And he got mad then that I had drank his poachine. It wasn't the fact that I had, a 12, 13-year-old had just taken a big swig of it, like, you know. And sure, from the rest of the evening on, I didn't throw any turf in the right spot because I was half cut, like, you know. But
Is that the first time you ever got lashed?
It's the first one I can remember.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I realised I was drunk. It was just I felt very funny and weird, you know. But of course he kind of swore me to secrecy, which I'm breaking that swear now. Because I think he was afraid of my mother finding out. So
of course, yeah. But
he was very much that kind of character, you know. Because he didn't have kids of his own, I don't think he had the same boundaries as a parent would have.
Yeah. So
his mentality was almost like, if you're old enough to lift a chainsaw, you're old enough to use one.
Yeah.
So I would have learned how to use a chainsaw, or like driving cars and tractors. Like I'm sure every other lad in the rural areas would have had a neighbour like that. But he was definitely a mine of information to go along with that.
Well, that's kind of how that generation grew up, really, isn't it?
Yeah, big time.
My mother came from Kilkenny. And my uncle now, he would have been a bachelor, but like there was no fridge in the house. It was a cool box from probably the 50s. You know, he didn't have running water for a while. There was water collected in a barrel out the back of the house. Yeah. You know, there was no toilet in the house. It was outside. You know, so it was hands on.
Yeah, very much so, and I think there was a great understanding as well of the surrounding areas. I mean, not just. I mean, you can say somebody's a farmer, but I think it was more than that. He had an understanding of the landscape and the animals. He knew them really well. Yeah, they weren't just his cattle, you know. It was very much a living landscape.
Did he name them?
No, he didn't. But he had names in all the fields. Each field would have had a name.
Name the field, don't name the cattle.
Yeah. Now,
did he have any dogs at all?
He did.
Did he name them?
He had a dog called Skippy. Yeah.
Okay, Skippy.
And Skippy.
Because I remember old fellas not naming dogs around here. Yeah. That was fucking hilarious to me.
Oh, really?
Like, what's the name? I wouldn't never fucking name me.
That's nuts. No, it's actually Skippy it's a very ironic name because poor old Skippy didn't end so well because I think he loved Skippy too much.
So, right.
No, not in that way, but in terms of he probably should have had Skippy put down long before he died.
Oh, right, okay.
So Skippy ended up being down to his last 2 legs, skipping.
Skipping
around. Yeah. But no, Skippy was the bane of my life as a young lad because he was your typical border collie that was very aggressive later in life when he wasn't getting the run out, full of energy. So we'd have to avoid him at all costs, which is hard to do when your next door neighbour is about 20 metres away.
Yeah.
But that's Skippy. I haven't thought about Skippy in a long time.
So that kind of started off your interest in kind of local history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And was that the bush kangaroo? But then when you did secondary school in Gort then up the road, did that expand on your interest then in
would you
history?
believe it actually had the opposite effect? I think a lot of it stems from Lavin and his crew with the music and I suppose different outlets and art and that kind of thing. I would have had an interest in history, but it didn't necessarily go the whole way through. So, for example, I didn't do history in school. It was one of the subjects that
I didn't do history?
No.
In school?
I did it in junior cert because it was a core subject, but I never picked it for leaving because it clashed with art.
I did history in leaving and I did art as well.
Or maybe it was, what else did I do? I can't remember, physics or something. There was
did history.
Yeah, I didn't
fucking really do much in history.
Yeah, I didn't do history at all.
That's funny now.
Yeah.
Did you do classical studies?
No.
You weren't in the classical
I
studies
wasn't.
either.
I wasn't.
The
No.
classical studies in secondary school.
No. I
Yeah,
wasn't.
no, I did it on Saturdays.
It was like an extracurricular thing. You had the
Yeah.
option of bringing in a
But it was
teacher.
great crack because you just hang out with your friends and talk about.
You did extracurricular work.
Yeah,
Wow, that blows my mind.
I know.
Yeah, believe it or not, he was coming in of a Saturday doing his work.
I can't believe it did either. But it was kind of a way to get out of, I don't know, to hang out with your buddies.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'd eat
And
like
there was a
massive
good. There was a
chicken
good.
rolls. I remember from that we would go down to this. Is it what's that? Is it a Centra down there? We were allowed to go down to eat our lunch during the day. I think it's a Centra in Gort.
The one halfway down the town
The
by the
one
railway
next
tracks.
to next to Aldi. Yeah, rail tracks.
in Century. Yeah.
So I remember one time I went in there and got a hot chicken roll with black pudding on it. It was fantastic. It was around the same time that the cream egg was out, so I got a cream egg as well. And I was like, "Jeez, I fucking wonder." So I took out the black pudding and I dipped it in the cream egg.
No, that's disgusting.
And at that, it was amazing. I haven't done it since, but I remember saying, "Lads, you got to try this."
I think it's one of those nostalgia things kicking in there.
Yeah,
That
I think
doesn't-
definitely.
I
Yeah.
don't think
Well,
that sounds
I-
nice.
We'll try it later. Try it later when we go into
I
town.
think I'm going to try it. Yeah.
Well, I do love those two ingredients separately, but I don't know what I mix them. You
Yeah.
know,
It's worth it.
I will.
Or would you
We're
be one of
trying
those people? What was it? Chips and ice cream.
I'm not a chips and
Yeah.
ice cream
Ice
guy.
cream.
Oh,
I haven't heard
I
that.
think my girlfriend was on about it before.
If it was a strawberry milkshake, maybe.
I think the weirdest thing I've had that's somewhat similar to that is milk and Coke mixed together slightly.
What?
Like a float.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I think it happened by accident. I remember because you,
Full. Yeah.
you know me with the milk and tea.
Uh-huh.
But milk, I don't know. I had maybe a mouthful of milk left in the glass and just poured some Coke in without realizing it, and tasted really nice. So,
Really?
yeah.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like bananas?
How do you mean like bananas?
I don't, well,
Bananas
Well,
are nice, is it?
a couple like a decade ago, we were drinking Buckfast and mixing milk with that. Jamie Stack and Daly and I think Mulligan were calling it Blimfast
Blimfast.
for some reason,
Something like Slim Fast, maybe.
but
or
it
something.
tasted like bananas. Buckfast and milk mixed together. It was
That's
very
it.
strange.
That's interesting. I actually seen 2 bottles of Buckfast on my walk down to get the train to come down to see you
Really?
today. Yeah,
In Dublin?
Yeah, I was very surprised. Yeah.
Why is it not popular in Dublin?
I haven't seen anybody, only Galway lads drinking Buckfast in Dublin.
Really?
Yeah.
Galway is, for Ireland anyway, the big Buckfast place. And then I think it's Glasgow is bigger again.
Yeah, abroad. Yeah.
But
Abroad.
they drink
Abroad in
abroad in
Glasgow.
Glasgow. But they drink
not Europe
fucking,
anymore, though.
they drink the green bottles, you know,
Or the
they drink
EU even.
the old northern bottles. They're
Oh,
different.
the green bottles.
The
Yeah.
green bottles.
Yeah, they're odd.
Yeah, some people prefer them,
Yeah, they do.
but they're a little more syrupy or something.
Yeah. It's a long time since I drank a bottle of Buckfast. To be honest.
Is it? It's probably been
Long
about
time.
3 months for me.
It's probably been about 2 years for me.
Yeah, I have a Buckfast tattoo on my leg, so that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Less said about that, the better, man.
I also have Nut Hot tattoo on my leg.
Yeah, that's true.
the shitty Chinese restaurant in
Put that in
Galway.
context, actually. Yeah.
It's a terrible Chinese restaurant in Galway. Well, sorry, it's not terrible. It's lovely.
It is. It's not bad. Yeah.
Lovely chicken balls that you get out of there. Eamon doesn't like chicken balls.
I don't mind chicken balls, but I don't like chicken balls wrapped in that really thick batter.
Well, this is very thick, lovely
No,
batter.
Yeah, I wouldn't like it then.
And I just decided one day to tattoo Nut Hot on my leg.
What age were you when you did that?
This was probably about 8 or 9 months ago, and I'm 32 now.
And was I there for that one? No,
Wow.
I was there for the touch-up, was I?
No, I was the boys all got like tattoo needles and ink and stuff, and they were like, "Oh, we'd love to get tattooed." And I was like, "All right, I'll fucking tattoo you. What do you want?" And no one could think of what they wanted, so I was like, "Well, I'll just tattoo myself first." So, and I was like, "What do I want?" And I was like, "I'll just tattoo Nut Hot on for the crack."
What age did you meet first, actually?
I don't remember.
A lot of people we knew. I think one of the first things he said to me was very unique, to say the least. And he came up to me and told me,
I don't remember this at all.
yeah, he came up to me and told me that the grease from my nose would be fantastic for playing guitar with.
I don't know where that came out of.
Wow.
Which I didn't know to be complimented or insulted by. But I didn't take it as an insult, so we got chatting, and I think that's how I got into Lav and had a few more. We're playing music, and one of my best friends, Shane, he played the bass, and next thing you know, there was a band formed, and we were pretty much from that point forward joined at the hip, I think, all of us. So that's how I got to know him.
Yeah. Gort's kind of a strange place, especially from someone looking in, because it's quite it's a country town, but it's kind of bohemian because you have the influence of but like there's
I've never heard Gort described as bohemian before.
Maybe right. Well, there's like there's a lot of hippies around.
There's
Gort was a nut house when we were in it.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say
Gort
that.
School.
Yeah, but you see, a lot of that is because of the hinterland that is.
That's
it's
more
huge.
of the influence, really. I suppose.
It's absolutely huge. It goes from New Quay over across in the Burnside all the way down to Crusheen and Clare. Up as far as Killanena on the Tulla Road.
The Burn Lowlands.
I'm going to move on past that one. So it goes all the way over then, like towards Lochray and up as far as Clare Bridge. So it's huge area.
Yeah, it's massive.
So within that, then you get lots of different people. So like what you're saying there, you have what we would call hippies, I suppose, in different settlements and around the place. Then you'd have your typical guys that were in their GA mindset, or farmers, and Kinvara I would say Kinvara is fairly bohemian in terms of
a lot of like Gort townies as well. Yeah,
and you had Brazilians, so a huge influx of Brazilians when we were in school.
Yeah, I think that started when we were in school.
Yeah, it started literally when I came into transition year.
Yeah,
because
I remember that. Yeah,
because transition year was like the first time they had to try and integrate the Brazilians that had no English into the school.
All right,
which was a huge problem because the school didn't have resources for language teachers. So, a very Irish solution. They decided to pair up one Brazilian with one Irish student during transition year, and I was paired up with Macon, and I'm quite proud that he worked as the town translator for a long time afterwards.
Really? Yeah.
That's great.
But I don't think it's down to me, to be honest. But I'll claim that.
You take that.
So, I mean, I became semi-fluent in like really bad language in Portuguese. But he became fluent in English. He was he had some words coming into that. But even from a teenage boy perspective, having these very beautiful Brazilian ladies coming in. I mean, I always say this when somebody asks me where I'm from. I talk about Gort, and most people have heard of Gort for two reasons: the battered Mars bars in Kettle of Fish.
The kettle of fish was a
chipper.
Was a chipper that is long since
it's gone. Gort. Is it?
It's gone.
Yeah, and then I think they moved into Galway City for a while. They
had battered Mars bars.
Yeah, and then
I ate two one day.
Yeah, they were pretty tasty now. Yeah, and then the second reason was the influx of Brazilians.
What was the draw for?
It was a meat factory in the town, and most of the Brazilians in Gort come from a town called Anápolis in Brazil.
Okay,
and I think the meat factory in Gort was either getting meat from Brazil or they had partnered with some meat plant out there, and slowly but surely lots of people came over and I'd say within a 18-month period, I'd say one of every two people in the town was Brazilian.
And they stayed then though as well. There's
a lot of them did.
There's a community there now.
Absolutely,
absolutely. I mean, I think they've spread out a lot more since, but I mean, we're talking, I don't know, 2005, 2004-ish.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was like something you'd see in a movie where you'd have farmers coming up to the town square at 7 o'clock in the morning and the place would be full of Brazilian labourers.
Yeah.
They'd pull up in their Jeep, Brazilian would hop in.
No way.
And they'd go off and do farm work for the day. Kind of like what you see in a movie now with, I suppose, Mexican labourers in America.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same. It was nuts. But it was harder then to get a job as a young lad then, But
of course,
that makes sense too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my dad worked in the meat factory actually, so I think I got to know more Brazilians through him and his colleagues as well.
What did your dad do in the meat factory? What was his job description?
So my dad's exact job description was a boner.
A boner.
He was a meat boner, yeah. So he boned out the meat. You always take joy from that. But yeah, he used to bone out the bones basically from sides. You get a side of beef, like half a cow, and basically turn that into what you see in a Tesco packet. Yeah. So yeah, very strenuous, arduous labour.
Absolutely.
Where is the meat factory in Gort?
It's gone. It's closed up now. It's down on the Galway end of the town. So near Lidl. I don't know if you know
Oh,
the Lidl.
okay, yeah,
It's actually on that road.
It was there.
Yeah. So
Jeez, I don't remember that at all.
So the road to Lidl, if you keep going past Lidl, go back another 100 meters on the left is just the factory.
So past the bottle bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the factory's still there, but it's closed down. I mean, there was a
right.
fire there a few years ago as well.
Oh, I think I remember that. I think I remember some.
But it was
some
closed.
talk about
It was
that,
closed down before that or around that time. So yeah, it's gone. As far as I know. I mean, somebody might correct me on that, but my dad hasn't worked there for a long time, so he was one of the last Irish lads to work there as well. I think he was one of the last 5.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And then you moved into Galway for college.
Yeah. So I moved into Galway straight after the Leaving Cert. Lived in a house with 6 other fellas from Gort.
As you do.
Is this the Jaw?
That was the Jaw, yeah. In Newcastle.
The name of the house is the Jaw.
Why was it called the Jaw?
Why was
I
it
actually
called
don't
the Jaw?
know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It might have just been.
It's just one of those childish nicknames that stuck for some reason.
I think we gave nicknames to a lot of things, but they were very non sequitur nicknames.
Yeah.
You know, like there was no reason behind most of them.
Yeah. So
What did you study then? Did you move back in towards
No,
history side
no.
of
Again,
things, or?
history. Like, yeah, I suppose the theme there, the history thing, I kind of moved away from that, and even more so actually when I went into Galway because I stopped coming home every weekend.
Yeah.
And I got kind of used to the city life. I went in and did arts, with the intention of potentially coming out to do national school teaching. So for the first year in arts, so I did 4 subjects in the first year. I did English, Celtic civilization, Irish, and classical civilization, with the intention of keeping on English and Irish to my degree level.
Yeah.
Because for those that are listening that don't know, after the first year, or at least when I was there, you could only pick 2 to carry on to finish your degree. And then I kind of got a bit disillusioned with the way the Irish was taught, because at the time I was fairly fluent, and it was very basic. It was actually, I mean, of course the entire lectures were in Irish, and there was an awful lot of focus on grammar, which I didn't really enjoy. But then the oral at the very end of the year was, kind of where most people would be at with junior cert level Irish, which I was very annoyed with. So I had a very knee-jerk reaction to that, and I decided I would stay with Celtic civilization and English. Didn't really think about the practical consequences of that.
Yeah.
But kept that up anyway and continued that on. I met some great people through that, but it was a lot harder to find any job out of that. And I suppose fast forward on to 2010, finished that, and of course the country was in tatters at that stage. The recession had done its damage to the first wave of college graduates, and I was coming out in the second wave, and most of my friends had already left, emigrated, gone to New Zealand, Canada.
Who went to New Zealand?
A lot of lads I was in college with.
Oh, just like okay.
Yeah. So
I didn't go to college with them, you see. So.
Yeah, so we you had gone back to the States in the meantime.
I was in the States at that point, yeah.
Yeah, so we had actually hadn't seen each other a lot actually during that 3 years.
No, not at all.
I'd say maybe 3 times.
Maybe that, yeah.
I was going off doing my own thing with all these notions in my head. But yeah, long story short, came out of Galway, was living there. Relationship I was in at the time didn't work out, so I moved home to Galway. Sorry, to South Galway, to Beagh again.
Yeah.
Beagh.
And that was tough, I'm not gonna lie. It was a big step down in a lot of ways, and in the meantime Mick, that had left a lasting legacy on me earlier in life, had actually got dementia at that stage, and
oh god,
was close to he ended up dying not long after I got home. So there wasn't a whole outlet there, and of course I'm one of the very few in the rural area that doesn't drive. So I don't have a car. I know how to drive, but I have no license. So
you know how to drive?
Yeah.
We'll stick you in the car later.
No. Well, I mean, you've an automatic anyway, so a monkey could drive that.
Well, at least I'm driving a car.
That's true. But yeah, so that was tough. So then I had to keep my mind busy. So I started looking to see what I could do, and again the national school thing was something I was holding on to. So I went down to the national school that I attended as a child and asked them, did they need any help with remedial teaching?
Mm-hmm.
And the headmaster there was really accommodating and helped me through the whole Garda vetting process and all of that. So he basically gave me a class of 10 kids that needed extra help on my own, which was nice. So I was helping them out for about 6 months or so, and decided then the teaching wasn't for me as a result of that. I didn't have the patience to be working with kids. I mean, it was very rewarding and really, you know, you could see the difference that you were making, but I think maybe later, I could have done something better.
And on the topic of your family history, there's an island out here. Don't you have relatives from that? We're looking at an island here. We're in the conservatory, my parents' house. And there's an island here, Island Eddy.
Yeah, so like that kind of area, which kind of surprised me because most of, like I said earlier on, my mother's from Ennis, and my father is from, all of my Healy line are from Beagh, all the way back to at least the 1780s, as far as I can go. So there wasn't a whole lot of new blood from different areas, but I was surprised to see my great grandmother. Her surname was Fordham. It's a very rare Irish surname. Yeah. So it's Fordham. And when I started looking into to see where she was from, she used to, like everybody in the family used to say she was from Ballinderry, but she's technically from Killeen-Oran. Yeah. Townland, like for those that don't know, borders the sea. When I started looking into her family, they were boat builders or carpenters.
Okay.
And then one set of the family settled on Island Eddy. Yeah. And then because again the surname is so rare, so when I say rare, there was only 7 families that I could find in the 1850s that had this particular spelling. Mad, isn't it? One of them was in the name of it now is going to escape me. I'm going to say Grumna Island. Okay. On Connemara side. Yeah. And the other family was in Mycullen, around Oughterard as well. Yeah. And I always thought it was very funny that they were all concentrated in Galway. Mm-hmm. But when I started to look into it more by using, you know, lots of records with baptisms, you know, for example, the family in Connemara, they had a child baptised in Kinvara. One of the Kinvara family had a child baptised in Leitrimore, out in Connemara. So obviously they were using the sea a lot. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I like to think, I suppose the romantic in me likes to think that they used to build boats and sail them out to potential buyers, maybe, I don't know, or there was just that interconnectedness across the bay, which I mean still persists to this day, even with things like the Crinnew na Mod and other kind of festivals like that. Yeah, there was long ties there. So yeah, so that's my link to this part of the world, my claim to fame. So yeah, so that's the genealogy of like relating to here, but again, most of it would be South Galway, Clare, West Clare. I'm trying to think now what else I wanted to say there. I had another story there. I'll keep talking anyway before
another story of what now?
I'm trying to think. There was another story I wanted to say about the family. No, actually, I remember it now. Sorry. So I had mentioned about the blog post. So the first thing that got going on that was there was two brothers in the parish that were killed fairly brutally, the Lucknan brothers. So it was the first blog post I had done. So basically, you're talking.
And before you did that blog post, was there much discussion on the Lucknan brothers?
There would have been a bit, like, I mean, I think the thing with Lucknan brothers, I mean, again, for those that might know the history I'm talking about now, I'm talking about the revolutionary 1916 to 1922.
So we strayed away from your family history here. We're talking about something
completely
different.
Away from mine. Yeah, completely away from mine.
Same area.
Same area. Yeah, it's not like the same parish as where I'm from. But this particular atrocity, I mean, it's replicated around the country where the Black and Tans come and abduct, you know, local IRA or Sinn Féin members, and they're executed, and nobody knows what's going on, basically. So these two brothers, you know, their stories, this not by any means unique in that regard, but what is unique about this story is a photo survives of their bodies after what had happened to them. So as a result, the oral history in the area has survived.
What happened to them?
It's quite. I mean, a lot of it is conjecture because again, there's not a lot of eyewitnesses to see what happened, because basically they were lifted while out cutting corn with 20 other people. The van pulled up and took them away, and the family was told that they were put in jail in Galway City. And after 3 days, the mother and the sister went in to look for them, and they were told that they actually escaped, that they weren't in Galway City. And as it so transpired, that they were actually brutally beaten in Gort Barracks by the RAC and the Black and Tans together. The RAC were seen going in buying rope from a local hardware shop on Bridge Street in the town. and there's some eyewitness reports to see that basically give evidence that the two brothers were dragged behind the RAC van.
Yeah.
My God.
From Gort towards Kinvara direction, which is, the guts of 10 miles or so.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Now their bodies were found in a ditch covered with oil. So they were found in a little puddle of water, and the bodies were burnt. The oil on top had obviously been set alight. Now we don't know if they alive when they were set alight or not, but when the post-mortem was carried out, they found that the some of their fingers were missing as well, and they had different things carved into their chest, and they also had grenades exploded in their mouths.
What?
Now I don't know how much damage was caused by the grenades, but the pictures are quite graphic. So,
and there's the pictures that survive are of the two bodies in the coffins.
Two bodies in the coffins. Yeah. So there was a local national school teacher had a camera, a man from Kinvara, Thomas Hines, and basically his house actually was burnt out not long after, because when they found the bodies, they had to get them back from Drumhisna, which is where they were found. They were waked first in Kinvara on the outskirts of the town, not far from Dungura as far as I know, and then they had to be transported from there back to Shnug. Now the problem with that was all of their comrades were also on the run.
Okay.
Because again, it's in the height of the activity. This is pre-truce.
Pre-truce.
So you're talking I think it's October, November 1920.
Yeah.
That kind of period before things started escalating. So there was another woman that was killed, Eileen Quinn, in Cork and Kiltartan at the same period. Very horrible period of our history.
Yeah.
But they were brought back anyway from Kinvara to Shnug, which is the church in Beagh, under the cover of darkness. And basically, while the funeral was going on, the RSC rocked in again, and they had the entire church and the congregation under surveillance with machine gun men outside, set up on the pillars of the church, and they went in and they forced the priest to open the coffins because they wanted to, I suppose, take evidence of whatever military inquiry that they hadn't done to that point, because they were getting pressure because of the huge amount of publicity.
Yeah.
Now those pictures, I don't know when they were published first, but they weren't circulated when the boys were found.
Were they published in like newspapers at the time?
The pictures, not that I've seen. I did an awful lot of research on it, and I didn't see any of the pictures that I've seen. Obviously in history books of the area since. But I suppose where I'm going with that is I did a blog post about that, and I found an awful lot of detail from eyewitness statements and pension application forms from other IRA members 20 or 30 years later that describe the same event. But I always wondered why the two brothers were picked up. And I had a lot of reasons proposed on the blog post, but I actually got an awful lot of abuse for even proposing potential reasons. So I decided then that I would stay away from modern Irish history, because it was still fairly raw.
Yeah.
And that kind of led me to focusing on 19th century history, which is what I primarily blog about now, because I don't want to get involved with politics and things like that. So like, again, this is a very quick example. I was contacted on the centenary of this brutal killing, I was contacted by a journalist from the Irish Times because he came across my blog.
Yeah.
And he asked me would I do an interview, and he wanted to take it from the sporting perspective, because at the time that this happened there was a resurgence in the popularity of Gaelic games, and the parish is quite small, and the two brothers were the captain and the goalkeeper.
Okay.
And after their death the club kind of fell apart, and he was trying to take that angle because a lot of people have written about what had happened to them, and again a lot of it stems from the picture, because it's a lot easier to tell the story when you have pictures to see the result.
Of course, yeah.
But one of the things that came evident from talking to him was he didn't want to have a political agenda. And I was like, look, that's exactly why I don't want to be too involved with this, but I'll put you in touch with people in the area that every year commemorate them. So, for example, like Sinn Féin will always come at their anniversary and do a speech at their graveside, and that's fine. But it's just something I don't want to get involved with. I'm more about the history as opposed to the connotations to nowadays. Which leads me back to 19th century, where most of the time enough time has passed that people don't get too upset about what you write.
Yeah.
I don't want to be getting abused for the sake of doing history and research that I enjoy doing, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not doing it for anybody else, only myself. And there's a little bit of an egomaniac in me that the reason I'm blogging is so that people can see that I've done this and found the research, and that somebody else might make use of it. So, for example, I mean, I would recommend anybody that's an interest in history to set up a blog, and I mean, you won't get abuse unless it's something as controversial as that. But the good definitely outweighs the bad. So again, I've written about one of the events. I'm digressing here now, but it's a great story. Basically, one of the reasons I proposed for one of the brothers for being abducted, the older brother Harry, Pat is the older brother. Pat was very, very much involved with the IRA and Sinn Féin in the area. Now, he was, in his mid-20s, you're talking 26, 27. But he was seen the week before coming back from an IRA ambush on an RIC police patrol in Peterswell. Now, Peterswell is a good distance from Beagh, where I'm from, and most of those people that were involved, so you're talking about 40-odd people versus 3 policemen. So 2 of the policemen were shot dead, and the 3rd policeman escaped. Of the 40-odd people, Pat was the only one that was seen walking home during the day through the town.
Yeah.
And he would have had no reason to be out that side of the town. So it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to put together that he might have been involved with this. And if there was suspicions out there that he was an IRA member, I'm sure that could have played a huge role of the following week, them coming out. So I wrote about that in like a kind of a pre-blog to the main blog. And I was contacted by a grandson of one of the policemen that was shot dead. And he thanked me for writing the story, number one, because I wasn't writing it from a nationalist perspective. I was just talking about this is what happened, and did a little bit of research about the 2 boys that were killed, and they were both Irish.
Yeah.
One of them was from Kerry, and it was this lad's.
Most members of the RUC at that stage are Irishmen.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but absolutely.
And the country was quite lawless. I know, but people don't have a lot of time for them. But there's agrarian violence going all over the place, and they did bring a measure of a law and order to the country.
Yeah,
and it's always construed in a nationalist way to view things, but there was nothing before they were set up. So
yeah, for sure, and I'd agree with you. But I think a lot of that is tarnished from the black and tans, and I think the auxiliaries with that.
Of course,
I think that definitely is the brushstroke. I would say that and the land war, where a lot of people have this conception that the police were the ones evicting. The police weren't the ones evicting. The police were there to make sure violence didn't break out. The evictors were the one evicting. They had their own crowbar teams, as they call them, coming to demolish the house or get people out. The police were there to make sure violence didn't happen. No more than how we have now today. And again, I'm on dangerous territory here. But if we had protests, if there was a protest about something and anti-protesters turn up, the police are going to be there to make sure there's no violence.
Yeah.
So in that kind of a way, I mean, obviously, I'm no apologist for the British government. Like, there's a lot of things that they definitely got wrong, but I think there's a broader understanding there that's kind of hidden because it's easy to tar them with one brush.
There's a lot more grey area than black and white.
Absolutely. And I think even when they tried to commemorate the RIC, it was last year.
Yeah,
that definitely opened the wound, and I thought maybe we might have been past that, but I don't think we are. But I'll just finish on that story, because again, if some historians listening and they needed a little bit of a push. So the grandson reached out to me, and we developed a relationship chatting over and back, and I said, look, I don't have a whole lot of information because this was just this pet project. I wasn't really delving into it. It's not a book or anything. Yeah. And he said, well, look, I actually have a transcription of my grandfather's dying words on the roadside. And I said, well, where did you get that? And he said, well, actually, the priest came on the attack just after it happened, and he administered the last rites to my grandfather because they could see his number was up. So the priest actually took testimony from him as he was dying. Now, he wasn't trying to get anybody in trouble. He just described what had happened, and the priest wrote it down. And then I think years later there was a commemoration by his family on his death as an RIC member, not related to the attack. And the priest, or one of his descendants, reached out to the family and gave him this copy. So I got the copy of it through that. And it goes back to the whole thing. There's so much of Irish history we don't know because it's hidden. It's hidden in attics, or it's hidden in a shoebox, or wherever. So if anybody's listening and they're kind of half tempted to do it, I would recommend blogging. I mean, it's very easy to do. A dummy like me can do it. Anybody can do it, to be honest. But so yes, that's why it turned into the 18th, 19th century stuff. And I suppose the big event there would be the famine. But there's other things as well that I come across that aren't that well researched. So I was blogging more about things that happened in the parish in the 1800s. And in the meantime then, that took a backseat again because I found a job in the meantime. I started working in Ennis. And it was very much a job of nepotism. My auntie asked for a job for me, and I got it as a result. I had absolutely no experience in the job, but at that stage, my pride had definitely left me because I was dying to get working. To be honest,
Yeah, of
because
course.
it was tough. So I ended up making hot chicken rolls in a deli counter. So that was not what I had imagined when I left Galway, NUIG.
What year was that?
That would have been September 2011, I would say. Yeah, it was towards the tail end of the year after I left, roughly.
And then you would have gone to UL then maybe in 2012.
So basically after working in a stinky, greasy deli counter,
would you? Sorry, back to the hot chicken rolls. Would you have sold more spicy or plain?
Spicy.
People go for spicy, huh?
Yeah.
And was your spicy actually?
No,
like spice,
it wasn't.
It was. It just had herbs in it.
Yeah, it wasn't hot. It wasn't hot.
It wasn't
flavor
hot
like
spicy.
No, it was just
had herbs in it.
It was just called spicy. It tastes different to the plain as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I always go for spicy.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Oh.
I used to go for plain, but I always go for spicy now.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of mix it up. I mean, I learned fairly quickly all the different things you can put in a roll.
Okay, so if you were a deli lad and I said, "Can I have half plain, half spicy?" Would you look at me with two heads?
Half plain, half spicy is in the fillet.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, because I mean you're going to be charged double, like.
Oh, would you?
Oh yeah.
Sure, it's two fillets.
It's two fillets, like.
Well, sure. Can't you just someone come in and order a half one? You give the half.
No.
No.
Sure, who's going to order apart from you? Who's going to come in and order a half chicken fillet?
I don't fucking order a half chicken fillet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So that's a case in point. Nobody orders a half.
Does someone ever order a half one? No one does. No.
No. So what I would probably do there is I'd probably give you like chicken tenders and something. You know?
Oh right, okay.
But even then, like.
Not that I want to do this.
I'd have to know you. You know, I wouldn't be doing that for any job.
Well, sure. If you knew me, you'd just give me 2 chicken fillets on the roll.
Yeah, I would. But,
anyway.
Yeah. So the chicken fillets. I mean, I was working in there. So I was basically promoted fairly quickly off making chicken fillets to the bread man. So I was responsible for all the pastries and breads that were cooked in the shop. And I realised quite quickly that I didn't like retail.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's more important to know what you don't want to do, I think. So it
Sounds like you just don't like people.
It does sound like that now, but actually I do like people.
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
So yeah, I was angling to get out of that. And in the meantime, I had met my now significant other, Leslie, and she was very supportive about going down the whole history route and trying to see if I could do anything with that. But at the time, I was kind of stuck in a rut doing my own family history, and I kind of hit as many brick walls as I could with the money I had at the time, because a lot of, like, I don't know if you're aware, a lot of the stuff is subscription based access stuff. It costs money, like.
Yeah, you have access to all that stuff for free when you're in third level college.
Yeah.
But when you're outside of that, you know, you're paying for that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
What, like the archives and stuff?
Well, not necessarily the archives, but the material that's been digitized or is available online.
You can't just look at it for free.
No, most of it is behind.
So
the
like
paywall.
Irish newspaper archive, you have to pay.
They're all behind the paywall. Yeah.
Oh, newspaper stuff. Okay. Yeah.
But like some stuff is out there for free. Like you have the 1901 and 1911 censuses for free online.
Yeah.
A lot of that'll tell you how things have changed. When I started doing genealogy, it was €8 for a birth certificate or a copy of a certificate, and now they're all online for free.
Okay.
At a certain point.
Well, that's great.
So I mean, I've literally spent hundreds of euros for nothing, but that's another story. So
growing pains.
Yeah. So when I done my own, I suppose I wanted to do more. It's like an addiction, to be honest, an obsession. More so. And then I started doing it for friends and family. I said, geez, I could make money out of this. So I started doing it on the side for kind of sneaky cash in hand job.
Mm-hmm.
And that was funding holidays for, I suppose, a year or two. And then she said, well, will you not go back and do something in college and see if you can get a certificate? See if you can go from there with that. So that's how I stumbled across the certificate in the University of Limerick. They were doing an adult education certificate on genealogy and the history of family. And that was great just to see the broader aspect, because of course my own family were all Catholic, poor tenant farmers.
Mm-hmm.
But during a course like that, you get to understand a bit more about the Church of Ireland, or you know, the Quakers, the Presbyterians. I mean, Ireland is so multicultural, even back or multi-religious at that stage. that, you know, again is written out of a lot of history. We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
So that was eye-opening for that. So I kept going with that. It took me about a year to do that. It was really interesting. And in the meantime, I got promoted in the shop again. So I left the deli counter completely and started working on the shop floor, doing fruit and veg orders of all things. So again, I'm probably the most Irish fella in terms of I didn't know anything, only cabbages and
what were you
turnips.
saying that go off really easily? Like green beans. What was it? Green beans.
I mean, there was a lot of things.
Mange too.
Yeah, mange too. Yeah, that would go off ridiculously quick.
Okay.
That and, you know, the mini baby sweet corns that you get for stir fries.
Baby
that
sweet
goes
corns.
off so quickly.
Really? Sweet corn. Baby sweet corn.
Bean sprouts goes off very quickly.
Bean sprouts.
Yeah,
And they smell horrendous when they go off.
Absolutely horrendous. As does Coke that's gone off, by the way.
Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola is horrible.
Wait, Coca-Cola goes off?
Coca-Cola does go off, yeah. It does. Yeah.
How the fuck does that go off?
I don't know.
Like, did you have like
Like-
20-year-old bottles of Coca-Cola in there? Or
I
something?
wouldn't be that old. Like, so again, to backtrack in the shop, like a lot of the stuff in shops is what they call sale and return.
Yeah.
So if it's not sold, you go back to the company who owns the product and you get credit. They take the stuff that's out of date and they give you credit for what you've already bought the product for. So if I buy 100 bars of chocolate and I only sell 70, the other 30 bars are now out of date, I claim the price of those 30 bars back from the company and they'll give me the credit.
You don't send the bars back?
Well, you're supposed to.
Ah.
But a lot of places, they won't even bother.
Yeah.
They'll say, look, just bin them. So
So you can fudge it a little bit.
as a result, then you're going to have
fudge it.
Absolutely, and that's how I know the gone off Coke smells really bad.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of Coke that we found that were hidden in the storeroom, and basically we thought we'd drink it, and somebody opened it, and it was pretty nasty smell. Now, to be honest, nobody braved it enough to drink it.
Well, if you can use something like that for cleaning
metal or something.
you know, you shouldn't drink it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I was just drinking things that are gone off. Myself and Philip, one time, he had a keg that was from 10 years in the past, right? Might have been longer, might have been 15 years. Keg of Guinness. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, go out there and look at the keg. And I go out and I shake it around a bit. I'm like, there's still Guinness in there. He's like, well, fuck it. I was like, I know how to get it out.
That's nasty.
So anyway, we propped it up, got a bowl, took a stick, and got the Guinness out, and it smelled very, very strange. And I was like, I'm not going to drink this at all. I think I put my finger in it and tasted it, and it didn't taste like anything. Like, it tasted, well, like, I can't describe it. Philip took a nice big gulp of it.
Oh,
Then he goes, Jesus, that's alien.
it tasted like liquid.
It was liquid. Oh no, it was like black, like Guinness, but it was.
Does that remind me? I could be wrong here now, but did we do something like that as young lads in Kinvara, where we got a keg and it was?
Were you there?
I was there, but I didn't drink it.
We drank a few gone off kegs in Kinvara.
Yeah, I wasn't there that night because I remember
Procured from establishments.
Yeah, that was left out for a reason.
That was left out for a reason.
Yeah. Because I remember distinctly, it was around the time of the Leaving Cert, or I was doing an exam of the Leaving Cert.
Do you know what? I don't think I was there when you did it.
Okay, so
That sounds like it's just because like the lads from Kinvara would be at this all the time.
yeah,
So I think I was only involved in maybe 2 or 3 of these fantastic events
yeah.
of finding a keg and bringing it up
Yeah,
by the wall and drinking gone off Guinness for 2 days.
yeah. I know this particular story relates to what you were saying because I don't think I was a huge drinker at that stage,
Mm-hmm.
and I had nothing to do with the Guinness. It was just more I didn't want to drink.
Yeah.
And the boys drank it, and then they were supposed to be in school the following Monday. This was like a Friday evening or Saturday night, and on the Monday, all the boys were still not in work, not in school. Like, and on Tuesday, still no sign of them. So on the Wednesday, I think it was Mulligan. I think was one of them. I was
Yeah.
like, well, what's the crack? He goes, Jesus, an awful dose of the scours for the last 4 days.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So like that kind of put me off. Any kegs are left outside the pub, I was like, nah, I can stay where it is. You know?
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
No.
Well, when you're that age, it's worth it.
Yeah.
But you know,
Worth it for the story 15
Well,
years
it's a
later.
great story.
it's
like,
worth it
you
to
know?
get drunk as well.
I mean, even watching the mechanics and the dance that's done to open a keg when you have no tap is a sight to behold.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
For anyone out there trying to open a keg of Guinness,
It's very easy.
Very,
When you have
very
the knowledge,
easy.
like
you take the keg and you put it upside down and you kind of have it leaned against the wall. Then you get a stick and you shove it up in the hole.
Yeah, and it just
And
spurts out.
then it comes out.
Yeah.
And you have to have a bucket down there. So any young fellas out there underage drinking, that's how you get a keg open. They might have changed it now. Jeez, they might have.
They might after
The
hearing
new
this
kegs
now,
might be different.
You know, the cat's out of the bag, Lavin.
I don't know. I'll have to talk to some young fellas or something.
I feel like there should be some kind of disclaimer there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Young lads don't drink underage.
yeah. We don't condone
But,
any of
but
that.
definitely do, because that's where the stories are
Definitely do drink underage.
from. Yeah.
Anyway, so from the course History of Family and Genealogical Studies in UL,
Yeah.
did that bring you onto the job?
It did. So at that stage, again, going off the fruit and veg, I was promoted to managing the shop eventually. So it was a fairly large shop. You know, it was 80 odd staff, turnover probably 2 or 3 million a year potentially. I mean, I don't know the exact figures, but there's a lot of responsibility and, you know, long hours, not great money. I needed an out, to be honest, and I joined LinkedIn, which is one of the first steps I had to leave the retail industry.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I came across actually was Ancestry had a job posting on LinkedIn, so I applied for it. You know, didn't hear back, got absolutely no word back. Was very disheartened that I didn't even get to say, like, look, you're not good enough. Thanks for your application. Got none of that. So I kind of got disheartened with that then, kind of stage. I thought at that stage that my life was set to work in retail, so kind of made my bones with that. But then about 6 months later, the same job posting came up, and my partner Leslie applied on my behalf.
Oh, lovely.
Kind of unbeknownst to me almost. And then I got an email back the second time round, asking me for an interview. So I decided I'd go for the interview. So it was up in Dublin, and it was probably the most strenuous interview process I've ever had in any job interviews. And bear in mind, I had the 62, 70 odd interviews at that 1.5 year period. So I passed the first round interview. It was a phone conversation. Then you had to do the whole, you know, do you remember Mavis Beacon typing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, to do one of those. Did you ever do
I
that
don't know
in
what that
national
is.
school?
You didn't have Mavis Bacon.
So it was like basically you control a little car by typing words. So it was a way to teach you how to type.
Really? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I've never come across that.
Yeah, you're in a little car.
Yeah.
I think it was on a floppy disk, wasn't it?
it was on a floppy disk. Yeah. We're millennium kids here now.
Oh yeah, Richie's old.
Is he
Older than you.
older? Yeah. So,
Still look better than you, though. So right.
Yeah. So I had to do all these kind of tests to basically prove that I could use a computer. Because again, genealogy is very, generally speaking, it's for the elderly or people who are retired. So
Yeah.
not everybody would have computer skills. So I understood that.
Wait, why did you have to do Mavis Bacon?
It wasn't actually Mavis Beacon, but it was kind of a similar thing where you.
It wasn't Mavis Bacon.
No, Beacon. Was it Beacon or Bacon?
I don't know.
Well, you're looking at me very smugly there when you're
I
saying
thought
Beacon.
it was Bacon. Mavis Bacon. Anyway, it doesn't
Right,
matter.
we'll go with Bacon.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds better.
I just wanted to make you change the way you're saying it.
I'm not going to change. I just question it.
All right. So it was just a thing that was like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a thing like it was like it. But then I had a panel interview with 5 people
Yeah.
for an hour and a half, which was insane. And then I had, and it's typical me, I overthink everything, as Ryan would know. But I had an assignment to do. So it was a set assignment. I had 2 hours or 3 hours to get it done. I was given a brief of what the research goal was for this particular session. And up to this point, all I had done was Irish genealogy. And the brief I got was for Italian genealogy.
Okay.
So I had to start thinking outside the box. Got the thing done anyway, handed in my assignment. And next thing, it was all done online. You had to do submit button. And there was supposed to be a timer counting down as you do it. So you know that you have X amount of time left to finish the assignment. When I went to click submit, it reset the timer. And I thought, right, okay, is this one of these corporate strategies to see how honest you are? Or is it just a glitch in the system? So I went with my gut to it's probably them being sly. So I emailed HR, said, look, I have it done in this amount of time, but the timer doesn't record that. So it turned out that it actually was just a glitch. I was overthinking everything. But anyway, I'm digressing majorly there. But I ended up getting the job. I was hired in a position below what I had applied for.
Not above.
No, because they had felt that I hadn't the desired experience.
So you started off as an assistant genealogist, is that correct?
Yeah. So I started off as I started as an associate. I was only doing that for about a year. So so there's a tiered system there. Essentially it's all the same job, but it's more administrative stuff.
So maybe elaborate on why someone would contact Ancestry for their services and you know, what your kind of day-to-day would be.
Yeah, so my day-to-day, to be honest, every day is different.
Are you kind of like a beat cop right now?
How do you mean?
Like, you know, on the streets doing the this and that, or are you kind of more like, you know, the cop in the office, you know?
Yeah, more along the lines of a cop in the office. You're
Okay.
putting everything together.
Okay. Would you prefer to be a beat cop?
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay. That's good. That's good. That's good. You know that.
I much prefer being in a room left with my own devices and
Yeah.
looking at. Now, in saying that, I love going to archives,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the stuff that we need isn't online, so there has to be a mix. But to answer your question, Richie, like my day, when I started off, typically the person that comes to us is you know, a third or fourth generation Irish American looking to find out where their John Murphy came from in Ireland.
So you mainly deal with Irish and...
Yeah, so within Ancestry there's a division within, so I'll start from the very start. Ancestry.com is currently the largest genealogy subscription website out there. They started off as a book publishing company and then realised that the data they had in their books could be moved online, and the business was built on from that.
Okay.
So then, I don't know exactly how many years ago, but they decided to have a professional researchers division within the company. So they do a lot of work for TV shows like Who Do You Think You Are would be one of the most famous ones. Henry Louis Gates Jr. has another one. Finding Your Roots is another one. Loads of TV shows in the States and here. I mean, we have the UK. Who Do You Think You Are? We do a lot of research for that as well. And we have the Australia. There's loads of TV shows. So they basically have a division called Pro Genealogists, who I work for, and that's tiered. So you have lots of different positions within that. So you have an associate level genealogist, which is basically doing formatting. So when we do research, we keep a research log, and everything that is on that research log, there has to be a citation that accompanies that so that somebody can find. It's very academic.
Yeah.
You can find where the document you're looking at came from.
Yeah.
So a research associate would be doing that kind of thing. An assistant then would have more responsibility to do research, but still have an expectation to do a lot of admin stuff. And then the genealogist, and from then forward, there's a lot more emphasis on the genealogical research because you have a lot of experience behind you. You know an awful lot more about the sources and where to find things. So now in my current job, a lot of it would be kind of 50-50. The typical client would be somebody that has had ancestors that went to the States, Australia, wherever, in the 1850s or 1860s, that's looking for their place of origin, or it's somebody that is adopted, that has no paper research.
Okay, that's very interesting.
So the Irish team is the team I work on, but there's teams out there for all different ethnic groups, basically. So we have a team for what we call non-paternal event. So people are adopted, and we have a Jewish immigration case team. We have every kind of research you can think of. We can do it, or we know people that can help us do it.
Yeah.
So my first few cases were Polish, Greek, and Italian genealogy. I didn't get an Irish case for the first few weeks.
Wow.
So that was a steep learning curve,
Yeah.
And that's one thing I love about the job. You're constantly learning more.
Sounds fascinating, really, to be honest with you.
Absolutely, yeah. And then with the DNA aspect, I was very lucky when I joined. DNA hadn't quite exploded as it has now. So when I started, about 4 million people had done consumer DNA tests that you can buy online, and they tell you, you're 88% Irish or whatever else.
Yeah.
It's kind of pseudoscience. It's a marketing ploy. But the DNA matches is what's really important with those, because everybody gets 50% of their DNA from their mother and their father, and then it quarters, or it halves each generation you go back, and then you use probabilities to work out relationships between people, build out their trees, and then identify people that could be the person's father or mother.
Okay.
It sounds really easy, but it's not. And it's ironic because maths was my least favorite subject in school, but I'm using probability every single day now.
Wow.
But when I do my job well, somebody knows who their birth parents are.
Yeah.
And I've worked at a lot of different jobs in my life, and there's no job satisfaction like that.
Yeah.
I mean, KPIs and profit and loss, money, wastage, all that stuff. When you do your job well, it doesn't matter a shite because you're making money for somebody else.
Yeah, of
and
course.
it's not a tangible thing.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing something with an adoptee, you've made an impact, and it's something that you'll never ever forget. So like, I can't say a whole lot about the clients that we've worked with, but I'll tell this story. The first DNA case I ever solved, and I thought, okay, are they all going to be like this or not? But it worked out nicely. So because we have such a long hold up of work, so I have, like, generally it takes 6 months from start to finish, from when the client rings and asks, can we get you to do work, until the thing is done. And because I was one of the first on the ground level in doing DNA research, we had a very big long backload of cases, and I was assigned this case, maybe 2 months out from Christmas time. And working in retail, I never enjoyed Christmas. Never had Christmas off. Hated Christmas. I hated any kind of holiday because it's just a nightmare to work. So I was very, very keen to get my first Christmas off and spend it with my family. So I put in my 3 weeks holiday request. I had 3 weeks off. Once I had my holiday days, I didn't care. Work was work, and I could just leave it at that. But the problem was, I got a request about a month out from Christmas from my boss saying, we have this elderly lady. She wants to find out who her birth parents are. She also wants to get a picture of her birth parents. She knows it's probably not going to happen, but we're going to do our best to find it. And this lady was in her late 80s, okay? So her parents were dead. And I was like, okay, I'll do my best, but I have such a backload, it's going to take me a while to get to it. So about 3 weeks later, and this is about a week before I go on holidays, he says, how are we getting on with that case? I haven't even started. He said, look, we need to do it this week. And I said, this week, the entire case. Now, a case could be 40 hours of research. Yeah. So it's a full week of work on its own. And I said, look, it's not possible. I have too many other things on. He said, no, we need to do it. And I said, why? And he said she was diagnosed with cataracts in her eyes, so she will be blind by Christmas time.
Oh, God.
Jesus. So we will know, even if we're successful and we find the photographs, she won't see them. And I was like, okay, I'll do my best. So actually, it turned out to be a fairly nice case to work on. The DNA matches showed us to 2 distinct families. The hardest part in the DNA case is trying to figure out, is this for the mother or is this for the father?
Okay.
Because you don't know.
Yeah,
you
of
just
course.
get 2 different groups.
Yeah,
of course.
So in this particular case, she had a little bit of information, but she didn't know how true it was, because most adoptees have something. Some of them do, not all of them. But she had some oral information. She didn't know where she got it from, but she had this surname. And when we looked at the DNA matches, this surname appeared. And it was close enough that it was probably for her mother's side, based on what we had been told. So I started researching this woman. She had this name, and I researched this woman. And basically, she had a marriage notice published in a newspaper. So this is 1943, roughly, or just before it. And the marriage notice was to a man with the surname of the second cluster of DNA matches. So we had the 2 surnames from the DNA that we hadn't known about, and we had the surname of the mother that she brought with her to tell us that when we started the session. And I figured it out quite quickly that actually they were her birth parents. So they ended up getting married. So what had happened was, the husband, they got engaged. He went off to the war. He went and fought in Japan during World War II. They came back. They got married, and they had a family. But what must have happened was, she must have been pregnant before he left, and the father might not have known that.
Wow.
Okay, so that was interesting just to find that out. But the minute I seen he was a soldier, I was like, bingo, because we applied for his military file, and the military file had a picture. So we had the picture of the father. So then I kept doing a lot of newspaper records, researches, and it turned out that her mother was involved with the church group, and she had done some fundraising. She did a massive check. Sure enough, we had a picture of her mother, and we actually found all the siblings. Now, to wrap up the story, because I could go on talking about it for ages, I sent off the email, delighted that I got it done. Sent off the email, came back 3 weeks later in the new year, and I had a heap of emails to go through, but I went straight down to look for the response from my boss about this particular email, and he said, let's just say her name is Mary.
Yeah.
Mary died. And I was like, that's really sad, you know. Like, but did she see the email before she died? He said she died an hour after she read it.
Oh my God.
And every time I tell that story and even think about it, I'll never forget the chilblains I had up the back of my neck.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Now her daughter came back to us and said, I'm pretty sure she was just waiting to see the photos.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not a real believer in any higher power and all that. I mean, it's not something I talk about much, but it was very coincidental that happened, and that's the kind of job satisfaction I get, you know.
Unbelievable.
When I do
That's
my job
wonderful.
well.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So I think to date I'm probably up again 18 adoptees that I've been able to solve their brick wall. Now I've pulled away from doing a lot of DNA research now. I use DNA a lot more now to help with traditional Irish cases. And
Wow. Well, that's brilliant.
yeah.
Lovely
So
story.
hopefully I didn't ramble on too long with that one, but yeah, it's definitely one of those. It's a flavour of what I get to do. I'm very privileged. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of hard work, but it's definitely worth it when you get to do things like that.
That's amazing, Eamon. I never knew that was kind of stuff you worked in. I always thought it was more family tree based.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, a kind of a common misconception as well. A lot of the time, when people think about family trees, I suppose the general thing you think about is the pedigree chart. You know, you've got your chart with your
Pedigree
birth.
chums.
Pedigree chums, yeah. Your birth, marriage, and death, and just the dates, and a lot of people just leave it at that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things we do in our job, in at least in Ancestry, where we do an awful lot of contextual research and try to place people in those periods, you know. And that kind of got me involved in different aspects of Irish history I wouldn't known a lot about. So from that, then I decided to do an evening studies course, trying to learn more again about those kind of things. Again, to bring, number one, to bring value to the client when we're doing the research, and number two, just because I was curious and somebody else was paying for me to do more in education, you know. So I ended up doing what's called the Lord Mayor's certificate in Dublin, because I should have said the job is in Dublin. So when I was in Ennis, I moved from Ennis to Dublin for the job. And at the time, I had the very West Coast attitude of, you know, well, screw Dublin, like, you know. So when we sat down, there was 20 odd of us in the class, and everybody there was from Dublin except me.
Okay.
And I was definitely reminded of it quite often. And a lot of people there were also a lot older as well, so there wasn't just.
Would they call you Bogger or Culchie?
I mean, not as bluntly as that, but they would definitely make references that would. They wouldn't be very welcoming, you know, to say.
Yeah.
So like, it wasn't just the ages thing where I was, you know, 30 years younger than everybody else, but it was also the fact that I was definitely an outsider. So I decided to own that, and I decided I wanted to do my project for that course on Gort, with a focus on the famine. So I fell in love with the material, the source material I was using for that studies, and I went on from there. So basically I did that course. It was a year-long course, and they have a very an accolade, like an award ceremony at the end, where they give the best the best dissertation a prize, and I ended up winning it. Much to everybody else being kind of jealous about that in the course, because they had all Dublin related stuff, and here I was wearing the Lord Mayor of Dublin's prize for a Galway project. So the course coordinator for that course was very, very enthusiastic about me continuing on with that project and seeing if I could do something in college with that, because that course was loosely associated with I'm going to get this wrong now, it's either UCD or DIT or one of them.
What now?
2 colleges in Dublin.
There's 2 colleges in Dublin?
Well, it was associated with one of the colleges in Dublin and the Pearse Street Archive, which is the main archive in Dublin for Dublin records, basically. So he said, well, you should go back and do a local studies course, and he himself had done a local studies course in Maynooth. So he put me in contact with people there, and the ball got rolling from that, where basically I was going to go back and do a master's, with the focus on building on what I had done for that Lord Mayor's Prize certificate course, focusing on Gort during the famine. And when I got in there, then I had done a year of the master's, and doing it part time, it was 4 years while working full time. So after a year doing that, my thesis supervisor said to me, you know, there's actually room for a PhD in here if you can somehow manage to find funding for that. And I said, well, what kind of commitment is that? and he said, it's 6 years part-time. So again, I'm a year in, I'm, thinking 3 years versus 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a lot of commitment, you know. So I went away and had a discussion with Leslie and decided I'd go for it. Luckily enough, I managed to get the funding and built on the master's initial project and expanded that to do a comparative. So the initial master's project was to look at Gort during the famine with a very particular focus on the workhouse administration.
And this is the Poor Law Union.
Yeah, so the Poor Law Union. So
what is that?
So in 1838, basically, a national system of relief for the poor was set up, and the country was divided into different geographical areas, which were called Poor Law Unions. And the centre of each Poor Law Union was a workhouse where people would be relieved in the workhouse. Kind of like, what's that Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist. So similar to that.
Yeah.
Or like any Charles Dickens book.
Yeah. I mean, he does focus on the squalor a lot, but I suppose it's a reflection of the time he was living in, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that board so basically that Poor Law Union was set up, as I said, in 1838, but the people that actually ran the union were called Board of Guardians, and they were mostly made up of the large landlords or large farmers or people that were in the middle to upper class. They had no idea what it was like for a poor person. But again, it was for the first time it was a national relief system set up for the poor, so it was a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
It had been set up in England 4 years previous to it, another a similar thing. But in Gort, during the famine, as things intensified, the Board of Guardians were doing a very bad job. They hadn't gathered the right finances to keep the system going, so the guys in charge booted them out. Those guys in charge of the Poor Law Commission, they told them, no, you're not good enough. They dissolved them, which was again it was an insult to you can imagine again the local landlord. He's not used to hearing no. He's the king of his own domain.
Yeah,
nobody's going to go against him. And when these guys came in and said, no, you're not good enough, it left a bad taste in the mouth. So these guys were replaced by what were essentially 2 full-time employees in the workhouse, and they were called vice guardians. And when I started looking to learn more about them, I could find nothing, and nobody done any research on them really. And when I started doing a bit more digging, nearly a quarter of all workhouses in the country, the exact same thing happened. So nobody had looked at that. So I thought the best way to learn more about that is to compare it to a union where there was no vice guardians, to see what the difference was and whether they were, better or worse, or if it was the same, did it make any difference? So I decided to compare against Ballyshannon in Donegal.
Ballyshannon, hey.
Yeah.
He's never been.
I haven't, never.
Well, that's something to do in 2022.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to head up there now and do a research trip for the college, but hopefully get in Rory Gallagher at the same time.
You're gonna, it's around the same time.
Yeah. Well, I'm planning on it. We'll see.
I might go up.
Yeah.
It's a great weekend.
I was a huge fan of Rory back in the day. Against the Grain is one of those albums where I still listen to it fairly regular.
Against the Grain.
Yeah. So
what about like Top Secret or all his albums? They have like a name, like cool, like 70s cool, like, but it's all related to like police shit or whatever. Does that make sense? It's like fucking, what is it, like something number one, like Public Enemy number one. It's not like that, but they all have this like really funny name. I can't think off the top of my head. They all, like, even a lot of his songs, like Continental Op. It's like it's just so funny, like what he was writing about,
Very grand names, all right. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing now with for my sins, a PhD, looking at those. So I'm halfway there. 3 years in now. Started to get the stage where I have to start sharing some of my findings with my academic peers, and basically not just finishing after 6 years. Nobody's heard anything about vice guardians, and me trying to make a name for myself with that. I'm trying to get it in there now. Yeah.
So we even spoke off air about that case that you came across in Ennistimon workhouse, and that's kind of an example of 19th century fake news, kind of.
Yeah. So you get that a lot. I mean, anything history related. I mean, it's the same to this day. I mean, there's always going to be people with a certain bias writing about certain things, And back then, because of course I'm dealing with the famine period, we don't have as many records to work with as we do now. There's an awful danger of putting too much emphasis on one record set and getting an inaccurate picture.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a perfect example. So basically it was a newspaper report of 2 children that were punished for whatever workhouse infraction they had done against the rules, because of course it was a very strict regime within the workhouse.
Yeah.
You were separated from your family, your hair was cut, you were told what to do, when to do it. So if you went against that, you were either punished physically or there was other rules put in place to punish you. And in this case, I think the story went, now you might refresh my memory because it's been a while since I looked at that because it was a horrible case, but the story went that they were put into a black hole room.
Exactly, yeah.
And locked away and forgotten about. And when they came back and when they finally remembered, I think one of them was dead. Or
I think both of them were
both
holding each other and they passed.
Yeah, they passed away.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Now, again, dealing with the subject I'm dealing with, I always come across really heartbreaking stories. And I've developed a fairly thick skin that it doesn't affect me too much. But that story stuck with me.
Yeah.
Which is why I shared it on Twitter. Because it was heartbreaking. And I just said, right, I'm going to share this. I'm going to step away for the weekend. I'm not going to do any more research because I couldn't. My head wasn't in the game. And one of the people I know fairly well came back to me and said, look, you need to pursue this. Did this actually happen or not? So the following day then, and I got my thoughts together, I actually proved that it didn't. Or it looked like it didn't. I mean, I'll never know. But the person that was, told in the newspapers report as being responsible wasn't there when it happened. So.
Oh, so it was fabricated.
It seemed to have been, yeah. It seems to have been. Now that's not to say that.
And how do you find, where do you find that where would you come to that conclusion? A lot of the time.
A lot of the time, using as many sources as possible. So for that one,
is this just like basic historian 101 kind of stuff?
Not necessarily. I mean, so with famine research, a lot of the surviving material that's been used in nearly every famine book. Mm-hmm. Is what they call parliamentary papers, the British government papers. Okay. So you're already off to a losing start there when you're looking at it from the top down. Mm-hmm. You're not looking at it from what the 4 people were experiencing. You're only telling one aspect of one strand of truth. So you have to use as many as you can. So I was looking at church records because, of course, they're a non-governmental source. Yeah. And newspapers. And newspapers have their own bias. So this particular newspaper was conservative and the other newspapers were liberal, so somewhere between the two is the truth, Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of trying to find as many sources as possible. Yeah. So I might spend 6 months in an archive photographing thousands of photos. Yeah. But I might only use 3 or 4 photos because they might not be relevant. Yeah. But I don't know what's relevant until after the fact, which is just the bane of my existence, to be honest. Yeah. As a historian, I mean, that's what you have to do. Reasonably exhaustive search, What do you think of Time Team? I love it. Yeah. I mean, there's a nostalgia factor because, of course, I used to watch it a lot with you back in the day. But also the fact that it gives you bite-sized chunks of history in a very accessible way. Time Team, by the way, is a television program. Is it Channel 4? I think it's Channel 4. It's Channel 4, yeah. Where a bunch of lads in Britain... Yeah, the United Kingdom, and there's 1 or 2 in Ireland as well. Is there 1 or 2 in Ireland? They go and they do a dig on a site for 3 days to find something. Yeah, generally they don't find much. I mean, they fucking Samian ware is what they mostly find. Pottery, like a coin or a pot. And there's one lad who's Cornish. Oh, he's not Cornish. Sorry, he's West Country. And he's always like, "We will dig a trench down here, Tony." And Tony Robinson presents it. Tony Robinson hams it up so much. Yeah. He's always just like, "Oh, we didn't find this here today, and we didn't find that. Well, we find it in there." Yeah. And it's just like, Tony, stop trying to make it. It's a bunch of lads digging a hole. It's that's why you're watching it. It doesn't have to be. It's true, and what they do as well. The part I love is they do kind of reenactment of. They do, yeah. Of some kind of life, something to do with the life at the time that they're researching or digging for, and nearly all of it revolves around alcohol. Always. They're always in the pub. They used to drink meat. We'll recreate that whole process. And fast forward to the end of night 2, they're all in a tent getting scuttered. Yeah. It's a great watch. But I mean, it's a great question because I think that's the problem with history. it's not accessible, you know.
Yeah.
Like I'm even trying to make sure that I'm not being too boring describing what I'm describing, because it's very
well, that's
hard
why I brought time team in.
Well, it's true though, but it's one of those things that I don't think historians. That's one thing that shocked me coming from a non-academic background into a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of times that I see people standing up in front of an audience reading from an A4 page, literally just reading it out, and not engaging with the audience at all. And it's accepted, completely accepted.
And people are happy to listen to that.
Yes.
Sit down and they're like, oh yeah.
And
that was a great old reading from that A4.
And those very same people will come to life in the Q&A at the end of the lecture. Because they know their topic so well.
Of course, yeah.
But when you put that into like the general public, if you see a guy standing there reading from a page, you're not going to stay there long enough to listen to the Q&A.
No.
So Time Team is great for that. You never get bored, even though they're doing the most mundane, boring stuff.
Boring stuff.
And every time it's the same formula. It works. You know, it's like Robot Wars.
Trench 1 doesn't work. Dig Trench 2.
You know, it's the same thing.
Get the geofizz in there first.
Or geojizz, as my brother calls it.
Your brother calls it geojizz?
Wow.
Yeah. Geojizz. What would actual geojizz be? Snow?
I don't know.
I'd have to come out of the earth. White substance. Maybe it's just lava. Maybe the Earth's geogis is just lava.
Call it lava.
All right.
And move slightly on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's the kind of the long and the short of it, as they say, for the PhD.
The sun is setting over the bay at the minute. I think we've talked for a couple hours at this stage, and it's tremendously enjoyable.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Eamon, for coming.
Thank you, Eamon, for being here.
Absolutely no bother, lads, and thanks very much for being so patient and listening to me rambling on. And look, anytime, I'm delighted to see this thing off and rolling, and delighted to be the guinea pig in the first one.
Yeah, you're the first.
Yeah. Thanks very much, lads.
Absolutely. Richie, see you later.
Lavin.